The Shroud of Turin, very controversial. There was a scientific study of the Shroud, which I think is probably still continuing to this day. And one of the things that really moved me in that study was that the image is not an ordinary image made with the kind of light that we see from day to day, like an electric light bulb or the sun. We think of light, and when you take a picture, the light goes onto the surface of either an electronic plate or the old-fashioned film, and it does the thing it does on the film. But people studying the Shroud say, wait, this is no ordinary light that made that image.
Yeah, there's no ordinary light because it's a light that doesn't generate any heat. And that's the catch right there. As we've been trying to figure out the cause of this image, it's not the result of any kind of paint, ink, dye, pigmentation, or stain. There's no artistic substances on the cloth to account for the image. And so, but what we do see here is an image that seems to look like a scorch, but it's not a scorch.
It's not a scorch.
In other words, it's not a scorch made by heat. And so what could cause this? And so now researchers have been taking kind of a renewed interest into this phenomenon associated with the Orthodox Church it's called the phenomenon of holy fire. And it's been going on for 1,500 years. In fact, the first recorded incident is all the way back to 330 AD, and there's another recorded incident in 380 AD. So what is this thing? And apparently, the Orthodox celebrate their Easter on a different calendar than we do, and their Easter is designated as the first Sunday following the Jewish Passover and after the spring equinox. So invariably, the Orthodox Easter is a week to 2 weeks after our Easter, and so consequently, it's kind of not really paid much attention to, and it's but for the past 1,500 years, there's been something going on there that's pretty phenomenal. And what would happen is on Holy Saturday, as it's called, the Saturday preceding Easter, the patriarch of the Orthodox Church goes to Jerusalem and goes to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, and there is a ceremony that takes place, and they're inside the Church of the Holy Sepulchre is this what's called the edicule, which is like a little chapel that's inside the church, which covers the actual site of the tomb where they believe Jesus was laid. And so
let me just interrupt you quickly here, and for our listeners, we think of the garden tomb with the round stone as the image of the place where Christ was laid to rest. Now, a lot of people, thousands, millions of people have visited that place, and they say, this is the place. However, the Church of the Holy Sepulchre has been venerated as the place. And so we really don't know for sure. And it's a matter of faith. But what you're about to talk about, the Greek Orthodox Church has met in this place. Is it nearby the burial chamber, or is it in a chapel?
Well, it takes place in the burial chamber.
In the burial chamber.
Yeah.
Okay. And they do this when again?
Once a year.
Once a year.
On the Saturday right before Orthodox Easter or Resurrection Day. And it happens, and so the patriarch of the Orthodox Church comes in, and what the Israeli authorities will do is that they will go into the tomb area. They'll check it clean and make sure that there's no lighters or matches or nothing in there, and then they will shut the door to the edicule, which is over the side of the tomb, and they'll seal it with a wax seal. The patriarch comes. He gets out of his religious garb and puts on just a plain white cloth smock or a robe, no pockets. And so he breaks the seal. He goes into the edicule. Now with him, he has 2 bundles of 33 candles in this hand, 33 candles in there, but they're unlit. And then he begins to recite prayer, invoking God's presence, invoking his light over the slab where the body was laid. He describes this bluish light, but then because they believe it's plasma, fourth state of matter, it kind of takes a shape. And so this gas comes up and forms a column. And then from this bluish light, he takes these candles, puts them into the light, and they ignite. He opens the door, he goes out, and now there's in the outer chamber, there's about 700 people there to participate in this ceremony. And so people light their candles from this. But here's the interesting thing. This fire, holy fire as it's called, doesn't give off any heat. I mean, when it's first lit, it was about maybe 100 degrees, 105 degrees or so.
The fire which illuminates his candles.
Yeah, that fire.
That fire.
And it's and so now then there's a great celebration. Now, what's also happening outside in the main church is that there's this lightning type effect. It's like there's all kinds of kind of electrical discharge activity which is happening, and people can feel it. Their hair on the arms is standing on end, and they can measure it with instruments too that know that there is some kind of an electrical charge happening in this church associated with this holy fire. And so now you'll see pictures of people with this fire going up around their face. Their beard isn't burning. Their women are holding their hands over the fire, and so it doesn't give off any heat or any significant heat. Now, after about 25 to 30 minutes or so, it takes on the characteristics of normal fire. So, in other words, initially it measures at about 100 degrees, and then maybe 20 minutes or 30 minutes later, it's 300 degrees. But this may be a clue.
Now, let's talk about the phenomenon itself. We know about the Church of the Holy Sepulchre to an extent. I remember the first time that I went to Israel. I visited the Church of the Holy Sepulchre and had walked into the tomb and was told by several people that this tomb could very likely be the tomb from which Jesus rose. And there are some competing locations like the Garden Tomb we've talked about, but the fact is, this Church of the Holy Sepulchre, there's something about it, ancient. People have venerated this place in a very special way for centuries. But to hear about this event, which has an almost supernatural cast to it, is fascinating for one reason. Why is it just becoming known to us now?
I think that God, even something can be hidden in plain sight until God is ready to reveal it. When God is ready to reveal it, then it'll be revealed. And so I think that maybe now is the time. And I just think it's really intriguing that the Shroud right now, as of 1983, is owned by the current living Pope. Now, prior to that, it was in private hands. It was owned by the Savoy family for over 500 years, and all the kings of Italy came out of the Savoy family. But essentially, the Catholic Church has been the custodian of the Shroud for the past 700 years. But then, when the Shroud launched into the realm of scientific investigation in the 20th century, then a bunch of Protestants and even several Jews got involved in this research. And so now it involves the Protestant Church or Protestants through science. And I just think it's intriguing that this so now we know all the properties of the image, that it's not the work of an artist. It looks like a scorch, but it's not the result of heat. So maybe now is the time to take a look at something that's been going on for all these centuries, some kind of fire, some kind of plasma incident that doesn't have any heat, and that the Orthodox have always associated with the resurrection. And so maybe it's time for this to be the final clue as to what is the cause of the shroud image.
And the shroud image, and I've read the books and a lot of the papers that they're not public papers, and the phenomenon of the image on the shroud takes us beyond current science. It takes us, you mentioned plasma a minute ago as the fourth state of matter, and we have solid, liquid, gas, and plasma. What is plasma? It's an energetic conglomeration, a cloud of some sort of energy that can be directed, and it can actually leave traces when it passes by something. And most of the scientists today who have looked at the shroud use that term, plasma, or some sort of energy that we don't commonly deal with today, right?
Well, it's some kind of light, is what many researchers would believe, because you have a pattern of blood stains on the cloth, which is clearly the result of direct contact with the body, but the image is something different. The image is not the result of direct contact with the body, but is some other process. And so researchers have been looking at light, and one of the prominent experiments that was done and published in 2011 is that they did experiments with high power lasers, and they determined that a 40 nanosecond burst on a UV laser against a control sample of linen achieves the same depth and coloration as we see on the shroud. So this is an example of qualities of the shroud that can be generated using this intense light. And so here's what I think is a possibility, is that Jesus is in the tomb. He's wrapped in a burial shroud. And at a certain point in time, his body is converted to a volume of light and basically disappears. And leaving in its place, where the body was, this plasma field of low, it's low heat, but it is electrically charged, negatively charged, and this could have left a kind of a light singe, scorch on the cloth, but not the result of heat. And so I think that this may be what we're looking for, or what we've been looking for.
The biblical phrase is, talking about the rapture, in a moment, in the twinkling of an eye. In other words, a very, very short span of time.
Snap of the fingers.
We are going to go in the same way that he did, the rapture of the church. And there is some dispersal or release of energy associated with this. And it's beyond current science, which I love. I love the idea that our Lord is beyond current science, because you've got something there to say to yourself, I've still got a lot to learn. And by the way, so has science, right?